Hello there, I'm Tabletop Toby. Today we're going to be doing a review of Lightning Train, the hot new property from Dire Wolf. The lines at Gen Con were crazy for this one. I was super lucky I was able to grab a copy. The designer here is Paul Dennen of Dune Imperium and Clank fame, and those are deck builders. This is a bag builder. So just like in those games, you're starting with the same setup for all players. In this case, instead of the same cards, it's the same 10 chips, but you're going to acquire new chips as you go along. You're going to pursue your strategy, your friends are going to pursue theirs, and you're going to see how it works out for you with a little bit of luck mixed in as you draw those chips from that bag. You're going to be building your train lines. You're going to be trying to get deliveries to different stations. You're going to be building those stations, trying to optimize those. You're going to be trying to accomplish some goals along the way and see how it goes. So I think that's enough of an intro. Let's see how it works, and then I'll give you my thoughts on Lightning Train. All right, with this game, I think it's more helpful to talk about the end goals and the what's before we talk about the how. So of course, we want high score. I mean, big shocker there. When you build train lines, you get the score in the little dot, if there is one, along that train line. Here, you would get 1 point. If it's only 2 or 1, there's going to be no points. If it's a 5-length train, it's going to be 3 points. So it just kind of depends. But whatever the points are along that train line, you score those. The second way that you score points is delivering goods. That's a big part of the strategy of where you build stations and where you build train lines, is to maximize points by delivering goods. Some goods start on the board, others are going to pop up, but you can see where they're going to appear because there's symbols in the cities. You don't know when they're going to appear, but you know that they will appear. And we'll talk about when you're allowed to deliver. Essentially, you have to have a token or a symbol that allows you to deliver. But when you can deliver, you are calling for delivery to a station. Now, there are neutral stations that start on the board. Otherwise, players can build stations. And when they build them, they put a marker on them indicating that they own the station. But when you're allowed to make a delivery, you can call for a delivery to any station, no matter who owns it or whether it's a neutral station. Now, obviously, you want to call for a delivery that makes sense for you, whether it's a high-scoring delivery for you, or it could be that you're calling for a delivery to cut off a delivery option for someone that you know is building up a large-scoring option for them later. That could be another reason that you call for a delivery. You call for a delivery, there has to be, of course, a good connected to the train line that's available. We could call for a delivery to this station in Omaha. You will then look for the closest cow. You can't look for the furthest cow and try to maximize your points. It's going to be the closest cow because Omaha needs those cows now. So it's going to just be the closest cow. So that's going to be the shortest number of train lines. So each of these lengths of train is a train line. Now in this case, there's only one option that's connected. And then you just trace back, and each train line along that route is going to get 1 point for that player. And then whoever owns the train station, if it's owned, in this case it's a neutral train station, so no one will get it. But if it were owned by a player, that player would also get a point. So in this case, it's going to be 1 point for the yellow player, 2 points for the pink, and none for the station. But if that station were owned by a player, they would also get a point. So that's your second way of getting points in the game. The third way of getting points in the game are these mogul cards. Some of them have goals on them. Everyone starts with 2. Some of them are upgrades that allow you to upgrade and get ongoing benefits in the game. But some of them are goals that set specific goals. It could be, in this case, building rail lines in different regions. So if we build in 8 different regions, we're going to get 8 points. But if we only build in 6, we're only going to get 4. For this one, cities in the Northwest that your rail lines connect to. Everyone starts with 2 of those in their hand. They may be upgrade cards or they may be gold cards, but there's ways to draw more of them later in the game. So that's another way that you can get points. The fourth way to get points is when the Transcontinental Railroad is completed, which is connecting New York to San Francisco. So when there's a continuous rail line, no matter how crazy it is, that connects New York to San Francisco, you follow along that line, and anyone that has, and this is the shortest path along that, has locomotives along that path, they get 2 points for each locomotive. So that's only locomotives along that path. Those are the main ways of scoring, but there are some secondary ways of scoring as well. There's some upgrade chips you can get. This one, for example, every time you draw it out of your bag, you're just going to get a point. There's an upgrade to your player board that can cause every time you generate $7 on your turn, you get 2 points. And when you build your 5th station, you get a point. that. So just a couple of little side points you can get here and there. All of those things kind of hint at some of the hows of how the game works as well. So we'll dive into those. So first off, what the heck is a lightning train? So a lightning train is basically you get a train car. You're getting an extra train car chip on your turn. These you use to, of course, build your train lines. You also use them in your rail yard. You can basically spin the train cars. They go into your warehouse, and when you refill your bag, they're going to go in there, so they don't go away forever. You're just using them for that round instead of building with them. But they'll come back in your bag, and you can maybe use them in a rail line later. You can use them in your rail yard for specific actions, and we'll talk about those in a minute. But a lightning train is just a bonus train that you're getting, and you get one of them anytime this symbol appears. So if you have this upgrade chip, every time you draw this chip, then you're going to get a lightning train. And when you get a lightning train, you take from your supply, where you're just going to have your stack of train chips on the side, and you put it in this lightning train area in your boarding area for that round. And we'll talk about some of the other ways that you get lightning trains as we go along here. And then when the first round starts, everyone will have drawn their first 5 chips. Now in this game, everyone starts with the exact same 10 chips in their bag. So everyone's first 2 turns are going to be fairly similar because they're going to be 5 chips that you draw every single turn. You draw those 5 and you fill up these 5 slots on your boarding area. Now they're going to come out in a different order. So your turn and my first turn may be slightly different, but it's really the upgrade chips from this market that's going to start the differentiation. You're really going to start seeing that in the 3rd, 4th, and then especially the 5th and 6th turns. And that's where the bag building comes in. But as part of setup, you're going to draw those first 5 right away. In this case, we have a lightning train symbol on one of ours. So we got a lightning train that we put in that boarding area to begin with. So at the beginning of the round, you're going to do this production card. So this first one tells us that we're going to put 2 more barrels in Houston because the Houston oil fields are, of course, booming. Oh, it looks like we already took care of that. So we were ahead of the game. We pre-boomed, they say. That's the lingo in the oil industry, pre-boomed. And then there is a catch-up mechanism in this game where if the first player is far enough ahead of you, then you can get up to 2 lightning trains at the beginning of the round. For each of these colored sections, you'll see the board that the first player is ahead of you. But of course, at the beginning of the game, that's not relevant. And then you're just going to go in turn order, and then each player in their round takes all of the actions that they can based on the chips that they drew that are in their boarding area. Once they're done and they've taken all the actions they can or that they want to, they're going to clear their boarding area to their warehouse, which we don't really have room here on the right, but that's where it's designated, but off your board. And then you'll draw from your bag to refill your boarding area. If you run out of chips in your bag, that's when you take from that warehouse, that discard, and refill, and that's how your new chips kind of get circulated into your bag. Now you'll notice these plus signs in your boarding area. You'll notice on these upgrade chips, some of them have that plus sign. When you draw a plus sign chip from your bag, it goes there first, and so that's how you can end up with more than 5 chips. If we have this one, for example, and we drew it first, it would go here. And then if we drew this as the next one, once these 5 are filled, that's when you stop drawing. So you don't draw 5, you draw until these 5 are filled. All right, so what can you do on your turn, you ask? And that's a great question. You can do what's on the chips in your boarding area, and you can do actions that you can afford through your rail yard using trains to spin towards those. Now we don't have one in our boarding area, but this is a delivery symbol. That's something that allows us to call for delivery to a station. We can also, depending on player count and player order, you may start with one of these tokens. You can use these. These are one-use tokens to also call for a delivery. If you have a contract, which is a letter corresponding to one of the regions, in this case we have A, the Atlantic, S, the South, here's another A, and then the Northeast, you can build one rail line and one station in any of those regions. And those are each once per turn. There's an exception with that to the rail line, but not to the train station. So we'll start with the station because it's actually more straightforward. And you basically use the number of train cars that are indicated on that city in that region. So the only one we could build, because we only have one train would be New Orleans. We get to pick one of the available stations here that matches the size. Here, there's some steel there, so it maybe wouldn't take too many rounds for us to get some deliveries there. You spend your train to your warehouse, so we'll just put it there to show that it's spent. You take one of your station markers and you put it there. Now in this particular case, these starting contracts, when we use those, so this one we would have used this one because it's the only one with an S on it, we are going to have to trash that at the end of the round. Now that doesn't happen till the end of the round, so we still will get that $1, and that's fine. But those starter contracts are one-time use. Now if we were going to build a train line, now theoretically we can't do it because we don't have any trains left, but through the magic of space and time, we're going to say that we also have 2 extra trains. Just, because. And we don't want to trash both of these tiles, so we're going to also build in the south. So if you're building a train line, the rules for building train lines, you can't just build out in the middle of nowhere, just wherever you want. So you can build from a sunrise city, from one of your stations, or from your train line. And you'll notice as you build your stations, you get different bonuses. So the second bonus, when you build it, you get to draw one of these action cards. These action cards are all kinds of fun things, like this is a lightning train, and on that turn you get to build an additional train line, which is very powerful. $2. Tunnels. Let's talk about tunnels because we're talking about building train lines. So that's a great segue into that. You'll see these are tunnels because they go through mountains. That is someplace we would not be able to build right now because you have to have that tunnel symbol in order to build through the mountains. You'll notice that they appear on some of the train ships, so those are important to get early on if you're thinking about building in the Atlantic or in certain parts of the West. But there is a workaround with explosives in your rail yard that we'll talk about right now. Your rail yard. This is another use for your train cars. Just like building stations, when you spin these actions, these go into your warehouse. So these are going to go back into your bag and you're going to get them back. You can spin them in the same turn that you place them, or you can slot them there on one turn. Say you don't have the right contract or you don't have any contracts, which is something that can definitely happen in this game. You can set up, say you don't have a chip that allows you to tunnel and build in the mountains, but you want to build in the mountains. You could actually set this up for one of your future turns and have them sitting there just slotted, and then on your next turn, then you can use these, spin them, so they sit there slotted until you actually use them. And that allows you to build in the mountains. It also allows you to build a second train line instead if you want. Now it's either or, so it's not both. Also, if you have one station, you can secure a contract. That's what this little stamp means, which you'll see on some of the upgrade chips as well. It also is on some of those action cards. Secure contract means you get to choose one region for that stamp, for each stamp symbol that you have. Here's spinning 2 trains to get that. You get to choose one region where you have a contract. So you could say, I have a contract in Midwest with that stamp for this round, and you can build a station and a train line per normal for that round. So that's secure contract, requiring that you already have a station built though. Now these 2 sections in the top are just storage towards the future. On your turn, if you just have some trains that you don't have anything to do with, or you want to wait and build towards the future, line storage you can just put there. And that in the future, you can only use towards, you can't move these around once they're there, towards building a train line in the future. Build a station, you can put these here, and they can act as storage to build towards a station in the future as well. And then these bottom 2 are upgrades. They both require that you have 2 stations built already before you can do them. The left one, you need to flip this board over, and it adds 2 of these plus slots. So if you get quite a few of these plus upgrade chips, you can actually get up to 9 chips on your turn. This go public for 3. Every time you have one of these delivery symbols pop up, then you get a lightning train. So you get an extra train, so that can be great train generation. And so that can be definitely worth it. And then that also is that upgrade we mentioned, where every time you have $7 that you're generating, you're getting 2 points. So that's great if you have a strategy built around money generation. Before we get to money and what you do with that, bet you're wondering what these are since I've referenced these a few times. These are upgrade chips that are available as you move up the scoreboard. So you'll notice as you move up the scoreboard here at 3, 10, and 15, this little gear symbol, and at those times you get to choose one of these four. So you get 3 of these as you go through the game. This is a conductor and $2. So the conductor allows you to put a locomotive in your warehouse. You'll see it's a plus chip, which is nice. And otherwise it acts like a train. So you can spend it in your rail yard, you can spend it for these upgrades, and it's actually very good for that because it's a plus symbol. In the early game, if you get these early on, to cycle through, maybe get these upgrades, build stations with them, if you're having trouble getting a contract in a particular area, whatever that is. And of course, the locomotives count towards the scoring with the Transcontinental Railroad. Now, also on the scoring track, you'll notice at the 6, you get to draw one of the action cards we talked about. And then at 19, you can either draw an action card or you can draw another one of these mogul cards, which include those gold cards. They also include upgrade cards, which are nice. Here, if you have 3 stations, you just basically throw down an upgrade card once you've met the requirement. You now get an extra $1 each turn. Or rail lines that normally aren't worth points are now worth a point to you. So just a bunch of different options. Let's talk about what you can do with your money. So you can buy these upgrade chips in the market primarily. And these do all kinds of different things like we've already talked about. These plus chip $1 ones are always here for $2 until that supply runs out. And then there's actions you can take here at the end for $7 and $8, which are pretty pricey, but if you have a money generation machine going, for $7 you can get a lightning train and a point. For $8, 2 lightning trains and a point. Once someone hits 25 points, you take this marker here. It goes here on the board, and then for $4, you can now get a lightning train as well. And if you are short $1 at any point, this can be especially helpful early in the game if you want to get one of these more powerful ones. Now, we were lucky with the $5 draw, but say you had $4 and you're like, man, one of these would really get me started. You can take a loan, you get $1, and in exchange, you get this chip in your bag. It is a plus chip, so it would go into one of the plus slots first. If it's left in your bag at the end of the game, you get -2 points. The way you pay it off is you have to draw it on your turn and then have the $4 on that turn to pay off the loan, and then you get to return it to the bank. So that is an option. It's probably better to do it early game. And that's basically it. So something important though, with the trajectory of the game as you're looking at all these things is, if the Transcontinental Railroad is completed, so if San Francisco is connected to New York, so this is something you have to very closely pay attention to, that is the last round that any stations can be completed. So you cannot wait too long to build your stations. And then the game keeps going until either 12 rounds are completed, which there's 12 production cards in here, so then everyone gets 1 free delivery. If anyone does have any of these delivery tokens left, they can use those also and do additional deliveries if they've held on to those at that point. So that's one way the game can end. However, the game can be shorter. So if the Transcontinental Railroad has been completed, which it doesn't have to be, but if it is, and also the Transcontinental Railroad is connected to, in a 3 or less player game, either Seattle or Houston, then that will be game end triggering. In a 4-player game, both Seattle and Houston would be connected to the Transcontinental Railroad. In that particular scenario, you would finish that round and then 1 round after that. And then just like in the 12-round version, everyone would get a final free delivery. And then you're just doing the in-game scoring from the scoring goals, and you see who has the most magnificent railroad empire. For now, we're going to move into what I like about Lightning Train. So first off, it's definitely the bag building. I love this in deck building, and I love it here where everyone starts on the same playing field, and you're going to pursue your strategy and try to create those synergies and see what happens. And I love in this game that there's different paths you can pursue. There's the money generation path. And in this game, it can lead to getting maybe better chips, maybe even using money to buy lightning trains in this one. You can do money as a scoring option. You could kind of go a more conductor path. That's going to get your locomotives. That's going to lead to lightning trains as well. You could focus on getting those plus chips in your bag. Now you're drawing a ton of different chips. that also kind of dilutes your starter chips. It's very difficult to trash chips in this game, so getting a lot of those plus chips kind of offsets that a little bit. And of course you can do some combination of those, but you want to get those synergies. That's what's important, and how you get there and the different paths. There's a lot of different options, and it's fun to play with those on multiple plays. And that leads to some different discoveries, like, oh, next time I'm going to try this. And of course, you have to kind of listen to what the market says. And I love that in Clank. I love that in Dune Imperium. Maybe you wanted to pursue this strategy. However, this is what's in the market. So you got to listen to that. And maybe you don't buy anything because those options don't work with what you have going on. And I think that's why these plus dollar ones exist. It's like, well, I'm not loving those, and those don't really work with what I have going on, so maybe I'll just try to get more money so I can pursue something else. But I really like the bag building. The strategies are obviously more straightforward, especially than Dune Imperium, but it's fun to pursue those and play with them. I also really like the station and line planning and tactical aspect of that. You're going to be looking at what goods are out. You're going to be looking at where your opponents are building stations. You're going to be looking at what stations are out. You're going to be looking at where goods might pop up. If you build a station here for corn, is there corn that might pop up here, and that's going to negate a lot of work you might do to reach over here if corn pops up here in the middle and messes that up. So you got to think those things through. You got to see what your opponents are doing. Like maybe it's better for you to build a station here in the middle to take a delivery from one of your opponents, and maybe that has, if it's a station with 2 delivery options, another delivery option that'll give you additional scoring someplace else, and in the meantime you can kind of cut off one of your opponent's higher scoring options. So the fact that it's changing and evolving is very fun, and you have to keep an eye on that. You have to keep an eye on what stations are available. You want to make sure if you're building a station that there's not another one that allows your opponent to maybe get in your way. Or if there's one that could get in your way, maybe you build the other station in a spot so that they can't block you. So there's lots of things that you can watch and look for and play with. And that's really cool, and that definitely elevates the strategic aspects of this game, especially in late game as things get more and more complicated with the spaghetti of trains and stations going on. I also really like the goal and upgrade cards. These on top of the strategies that you're pursuing with your bag building add a layer of kind of asymmetry / focus. For example, the ones that we had in the game explanation, focusing on the Northwest and building the rail lines in different regions, those are very heavy train line building. So if we have both of those that are focused on building train lines, we would want to have an engine that's giving us a lot of lightning trains, a lot of train generation, so we can get those out and get that scoring potential, which we could then try to parlay into deliveries that give us a lot of points. So they can work towards both of those strategies, but it kind of focuses us in a particular way about how we're going to go about that. And I think that's really cool. Some of the upgrades also may do that. There's one that has, if you have 4 stations, you get a lightning train every turn. So that's going to focus you on getting stations out in the first 4 rounds, if possible, if you have that in your hand at the beginning of the game. So you're going to want to throw those down, try to be as strategic as you can that early in the game, but then you're going to have those lightning trains every single round, which is huge because that's just a guaranteed generation. You're not dependent on your draws at that point. So the fact that those push you in different directions gives a lot of variability and focus to the game. And the fact that they start in your hand, I think, is a very smart design decision that adds a layer on top of this game that gives you that variety from play to play that's really going to mix things up. And I think it really defines your strategy around your bag building as well. That example that I gave around, like, if my goals are to build a lot of lines in different places, then that's going to define how I might do that. So picking strategies around your bag building that work with those goals, and I think that's fun. It's a puzzle for you in the context of the game. And I think that can give some legs to this game, because then every play is going to feel just a little bit different, not only for what your opponents are doing, but then like your personal puzzle. And I think that's really clever, and I look forward to seeing how that plays out over time. Now, on the Downsides. So, a problem with all deck builders is you can just have a hand that is a dead hand. This definitely happens in Dune Imperium. You build this engine, but then you get cards that you weren't able to get rid of from your deck, and that definitely happens in this game. It definitely happened a couple of times very late game. It was like 2 or 3 rounds from the end, and I got basically starter tiles, and I was unfortunate that they were basically the first 5. I didn't get pluses, and I almost wasn't able to do anything, which is kind of devastating late game in this game. So, but that can happen in all deck builders, right? The only thing is, there's not a lot of options to get rid of tiles, chips in this game. There's the 3rd station that you build, and then other than that, I just wish that there was another option to maybe winnow it down a little bit. And maybe they played with this. I'm sure they did play with this, and maybe it just didn't work out. Now, one strategy around this in this game is to buy tiles that are plus tiles, so you kind of dilute out your original starter tiles. But these starter tiles, the $1 and the $1, and you do trash your original contract tiles, but they're just so weak that when they come back to haunt you over and over again, I just kind of get tired of them. So I wish there was another mechanism to get rid of like just 1 or 2 more, just as an option. Even if it were expensive, later game, it would be kind of nice. So just a thought, maybe. So I don't know. Like I said, it's something that you accept in deck builders, and I play a lot of deck builders, and I just played a game of Lost Friends of Arnak online where, I ended up winning and it was great, but I had a very late hand where I got several starter cards in the hand. I was like, well, that was not the late game hand that I wanted. And I had some magical cards and they just didn't come to me. So it does happen in mini games, but it's happened a couple of times in games I played with this. So I just noticed it. And I have noticed that I would like to get rid of a few more of the chips. So I'm just noting it as a potential downside for what it's worth. And then one other thing I'll note is just as you go along, and as there's more and more trains and more stations and more goods on the boards, there's a lot of stuff going on the board. And when you do long deliveries, you have to go through the exercise of figuring out what the shortest route is for a good that can be delivered to that station. And it is not, crazy onerous, but it can take a little bit of time to kind of trace through and figure out as there's more and more spaghetti train stuff going on. And part of the challenge becomes just the visual clutter, because there's a lot of color in things. And I don't know if part of it is you have the regions that are different colors. The trains use some of the same colors as the regions, and the goods have some of those same colors, and those colors are also on the stations that represent the goods. And for me, it's just a little bit visual clutter, and it becomes challenging to see. Now, to be fair, I do have a visual impairment, a retinal disorder that makes my color perception a little slightly weird, and it makes it hard for me to focus when there's a lot of clutter and things going on. And they did go for a fairly simple design, but I don't know if some of the choice around the colors maybe makes, exacerbates that a little bit. And one person that I played with also had that issue. So I wasn't the only one that noticed this. And it's just worse. At the beginning of the game, it's totally fine. Like the setup right now, totally fine. Easy, breezy, great. It's just late game when there's so much stuff going on where it becomes an issue. So just worth noting, I don't know, I'm not a graphic designer, so I don't have some easy solution I could just throw out, except for noting that maybe using the colors for the trains that are the same colors as these, and then it just is a lot of that. But just noting it, for me, I think it only becomes super detrimental in the solo game. And for me, that's probably going to make this a game that I don't play solo. And the reason for that is because when you play solo, there's 2 AI opponents, and on every single one of their turns, they have to try to make a delivery that gives them the best score. And when you go late game, you have to literally go over the entire board, which by then will be all these stations and all these train lines, and you have to find the optimal scoring delivery for them. So you have to trace all these things and go through all these exercises, which is a little bit of a mental exercise anyway. And with the visual clutter, becomes very, I would almost say, tedious to do that for both of their turns. And I found it a little overwhelming. The AI itself is easy to run, like their turn when they move to do the train lines and where they build the stations, super easy. But that delivery component, just as the game goes on, becomes harder and harder to manage. And with the visual clutter, a little overwhelming. So for me, this is probably not going to be a game I play solo. That being said, that issue becomes less with 2 people because you have 2 people kind of evaluating it. And I think with 3 or 4, it's probably going to be fine. But I'm just noting it and noting for that reason, I probably won't play this game solo, but I'm happy to bring this into multiplayer world and experience there. And that's fine. All games do not have to be solo games for me, although I do love playing games solo. And I love Dune Imperium solo. So that's fine. I will play Dune Imperium and not this solo. But just noting that as an issue that I have noticed. And with that, I'll move into my unfinal thoughts. They're my unfinal thoughts because I'm always continuing to experience games, especially games like this, that I'm going to continue to experience and play and bring to other people to try to bring them joy who I think will enjoy this game. And with this game, as I mentioned, the bag building is great and it plays well with the goal cards and the strategies around how you're building your train lines and how it's tactical. And I think if you love engine building, if you love that tactical strategy experience, if you love a little bit of the themey delivering the goods, then I think this could be a game for you, especially if you love the train theme, then you should really jump on board, so to speak. So that's what I would say. I would recommend it if that sounds good to you. So thank you for being here. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. I super appreciate it. And, just remember, the only rule that there are no rules except in board games.